Hello, fellow economists. Welcome back to Economics by Arsha, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply. So the reason why I wanted to do both in the same video is because they're pretty similar, so it would make sense to teach them at once. So firstly, price elasticity of demand, or PED, is a measure of how much the quantity demanded of a product changes when the price changes. Similarly, price elasticity of supply, or PES, is a measure of how sensitive the quantity supplied of a good is to changes in price. So the formula for PED is simply the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price of the good. And the formula for PES is the percentage change in quantity supplied over the percentage change in the price of the supplied good. Now, let me show you what a graph would look like based on the PED and PES of a respective product. So let's look at the demand curves. If your product is more elastic, the demand for it is more elastic, then your PED value would be more than 0 but less than 1. And this would give you a more elastic demand curve, a slightly more slanted demand curve. If your demand curve is more vertical and your PED value equals 1, then you have unit elastic demand. As for demand that is slightly more vertical, a demand curve that's slightly more vertical, your PED value would be greater than 1, and therefore your demand nature would be inelastic. As for your PES, the supply curve that is more horizontal would be elastic supply, and this is when your PES value is greater than 1. Your unit elastic supply would have a PES value equal to 1, and your more inelastic supply would have a PES value that is less than 1 but greater than 0. An important thing to note about unit elastic, and inelastic demand and supply is what it means to producers. For example, when you have elastic demand, this means that the demand for a product is very responsive to price. Therefore, if producers want to increase their revenue, it is advisable to decrease the price of the product, but to never increase the price of the product. However, if your demand is more inelastic, it is advisable to slightly increase the price of the product because the demand is not as responsive to price changes, and if there was an increase in the price, there would be a proportionately smaller decrease in demand. However, if you have unit elastic demand, it is advisable to keep the price the same because your change in demand is proportional to your change in price. Here, your change in demand is proportionately greater than your change in price, and here it is proportionally less, but here it's the same. Now, let me show you two new graphs. These two new graphs look a little different to the ones that we saw previously because they are actually a theoretical graphical representation of what perfect inelastic, elastic, and unit elastic demand is supposed to look like, and supply. So let's go with the supply curves this time. When we're looking at perfectly inelastic supply, you can see that the supply curve is completely vertical. And what this indicates is that regardless of the price of the product, the quantity supplied of the product will forever be the same. However, when we look at perfectly elastic supply, regardless of the quantity supplied of the product, be it simply 1 unit of a good or 1,000 units of a good, the price will stay the same. And if the price increases or even decreases by even a cent, the supply will fall to 0. As for unit elastic supply, it is perfectly unit elastic, meaning that with a change in price, there is a proportional change in quantity supplied. Let us look at the price elasticity of demand and its determinants and the price elasticity of supply and its determinants. Note that I only have 3 here because these are the main ones that one would look at. However, there are more that you can research in your own time. So the first one for both is the time period considered. Because as time goes on, the demand or supply for a good can be changed based on the current situation in the economy, leading to a change in elasticity of demand or supply. So note that I often use the phrase or demand or supply because there is actually a lot of overlaps in the concept of PED and PES. They're very similar, with the only difference often being some of the determinants and the fact that we are either discussing the nature of demand of consumers and the nature of supply of producers. The next one for PED is the necessity of the product and how widely it is defined. For example, if we're looking at necessity goods, their PED is more likely to be inelastic, and for luxury goods, it's more likely to be elastic. So if we go with necessity goods, a good example is bread. Bread is an ample resource and it is a necessity. It's needed by households almost every day. And so the PED for this good is likely to be inelastic because regardless of the changes in price, it's forever a necessity good and people are still going to be buying it, maybe just in fewer amounts or more. As for luxury goods, such as Louis Vuitton bags, Gucci clothes, those goods are luxury goods, and so their PED would be elastic because based on the fluctuations of price, you're going to have more or fewer consumers because this isn't something they need, it's simply something they want. The third determinant is the number and closeness of substitutes of the good or service. So if the product can be easily substituted with another or a different brand, the elasticity would be higher. For example, the elasticity of butter for brand A would be high if there are multiple different substitutes for the brand in your supermarket, such as brand B, C, or D, and we could go on and on. And so it's likely that your elasticity of this good would be higher. As for PES, the second determinant of PES is mobility of resources. So the higher the mobility of the resources, the easier production is, and therefore production would be elastic. This is because producers would be quicker to respond to changes in price, and if the prices of a good are decreasing, which means lower profit returns, the resources being mobile is a good reason for them to reallocate their resources to production of a different good. And the final one is production time and nature of goods. If the production time is shorter, the PES would be higher because of quicker price response. What this means is that if the production time of a good is shorter, this means that because producers could quickly respond to a change in price, such as suddenly decreasing the supply of a good or increasing the supply of good, the PES would be higher because the response to a change in price is quicker and more great. If goods are perishable, PES would be higher because producers would have to sell the item immediately. And the same goes for if goods are non-perishable, because producers would like to hold on to them for longer, they have storage capacity, the PES would be slightly more inelastic. So these are the determinants of demand and supply of PED and PES. Now let's look at calculating PED and PES as some examples. So these are really simple, and it's simply just for you to understand how to calculate and then how to determine the elasticity of the good. So here we have a good and we're calculating its PED. And the formula again is percentage change in quantity demanded and percentage change in price. So here we have a 25% change in quantity demanded and a 5% change in price. So when you divide the two, the PED equals 5. And because the PED is 5, which is greater than 1, the PED is elastic, or the demand here is elastic, price elastic. Now we have the price elasticity of supply. As we remember, the formula for PES is percentage change in quantity supplied and percentage change in the price. Therefore, here we can see that for the PES, the percentage change in quantity supplied is 5%, and the percentage change in price is 10%, which, as I should have written here, the answer equals 0.5, which is a value that is less than 1 but greater than 0, meaning the PES here is inelastic or price inelastic. So, thank you so much for watching my video. Please leave a like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications for when I post my next video. And yes, if you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comments below and I will be sure to answer them. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.